Perhaps you noticed, but Alex Rodriguez was full of fireworks this week at a contentious hearing on his appeal to his 211-game suspension. The hearing ended Thursday without the baseball star after he stormed out earlier in the week. A-Rod is fighting the suspension, which was handed down with the accusation that he used performance-enhancing drugs. Jason Carroll has more on his explosive response.
Frederica, this is something that had been building for quite some time. Rodriguez was basically saying he was so upset he just, quote, lost his mind. He called the entire proceeding disgusting. This all happening behind closed doors in private. But then Rodriguez went public.
I banged the table and kicked a briefcase and slammed out of the room.
Alex Rodriguez crying foul. So angry with Major League Baseball's commissioner and the league's investigation into allegations he used performance-enhancing drugs, he went to the airwaves to vent his frustration and to deny he used PEDs.
Did you do any PEDs?
No.
Did you obstruct just anybody, any witnesses? Did you do anything that they accuse you of doing? Nothing.
Nothing.
Rodriguez appeared on Mike Francesa's radio show on WFAN just hours after he stormed out of an arbitration hearing about his 211-game suspension, furious that the arbitrator decided Major League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig would not have to testify.
I exploded. I was very upset. I probably overreacted, but it came from the heart, and this has been a very difficult process.
Rodriguez attorneys wanted to question Selig on a number of points. They allege MLB investigators used unethical tactics, including intimidating witnesses into making false accusations about Rodriguez.
My only message to the commissioner is, I know you don't like New York, but come to New York and face the music.
What about you? Does he like you?
He hates my guts. There's no question about it.
Have you ever gotten along with him? You think it's just personal?
I don't think they like big salaries. 100% this is personal, and I think this is about his legacy, and it's about my legacy, and he's trying to destroy me. And by the way, he's retiring in 2014, and to put me in his big mantle on the way out, that's a hell of a trophy.
MLB denies their investigators did anything unethical. And as for Rodriguez walking out, this statement. Despite Mr. Rodriguez being upset with one of the arbitration panel's rulings today, Major League Baseball remains committed to this process and to a fair resolution of the pending dispute.
The proceeding is now over. Rodriguez did not attend the final day. It is now up to the arbitrator to make his decision, and we are hearing, Frederica, that should happen within the next several weeks. Frederica?
All right, thanks so much, Jason Carroll. So that hearing ended without A-Rod telling his side of the story to the arbitrator, who will make the decision on his suspension. I'm joined now by Lanny Davis, the attorney for Rodriguez's legal and media team, and Joe Carter with CNN Sports. All right, gentlemen. Lanny, I want to begin with you. Just a little background for a lot of folks. You're the author of a couple of crisis tales, and you've also worked with big clients in crisis management, from the Clinton administration even to Martha Stewart. So Lanny, you first. Well, explain your role for the Rodriguez team.
Well, I focused on violations of fairness and due process, and rather than using the general expression ethical rules, let me state a fact not denied by Major League Baseball. They paid $125,000 in cash for stolen property delivered in a satchel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, more out of a scene from Boardwalk Empire than our national pastime. Those investigative tactics and the fact that Bud Selig doesn't have the guts, after announcing someone is guilty on national television before the trial begins, he doesn't have the guts to show up in person to be cross-examined. My role is to point out the absence of fairness and the loss of perspective by Commissioner Selig on the legacy he owes to the national pastime.
But aren't there going to be some who say that A-Rod doesn't have the guts to go ahead and testify, instead deciding to walk out and, state his case on radio as opposed to saying it on the record?
Well, that sounds like someone in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, when the Queen of Hearts announced the verdict is guilty. Now let's hear the evidence. The person on trial is going to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is a kangaroo court. I'm out of here. Everybody watching knows that Bud Selig should have faced the music and confronted the person that he accuses, rather than do it on Letterman on national television pronouncing the verdict and not telling everyone that 11 random tests during the time period where Alex Rodriguez is accused of using PEDs, 11 tests negative. Selig doesn't say that. He doesn't show up to confront to answer that. And instead, he allows $125,000 in cash as if he's a character in Boardwalk Empire.
Okay.
That's why he doesn't want to show up, because he doesn't want to answer those questions.
Well, Joe, let me bring you into this because you've been covering this for a long time. And the fact that he did storm out leaves a lot of questions. But how is that being interpreted? And is that superseding any or all of what Lanny Davis is saying?
Well, I have to agree with Lanny in the sense that certainly Bud Selig and Major League Baseball, they've been no saints in this entire process. But you've got a guy, Alex Rodriguez, through the last couple of years has always proclaimed his innocence. You know, we don't have a smoking gun here. It means we don't have a positive drug test.
All
okay?
negative.
All negative. So here's a guy who has said that he's fighting for his life. He's fighting for his baseball legacy. And here he has the opportunity to testify in front of the one man, Frederick Horowitz, the arbitrator, who basically holds his baseball fate in his hands. He has the opportunity to bring forward all the evidence that makes him innocent, to make his case in front of that guy, and 2 days before he's supposed to testify, he storms out and decides to create this scene and then go on national radio and proclaim his case there. So my problem with this is, if you're innocent, then fight it till the end. I understand that he has definitely been tried out in the court of public opinion, no doubt. People are already calling this guy guilty without even giving him a fair process. But here's your one opportunity to make your case, your one opportunity to say, this is what I have to prove my innocence, and he took the road of basically abandoning ship.
Right.
So from our perspective, we're thinking, okay, you know, you've had this drug program in place, this agreed program since 2002. There's been 12 arbitration hearings since then. All 12 players have testified when they've been given their chance to testify. The most recent being Ryan Braun. Why are you not taking the opportunity to state your case, to say it? I believe that the legal team and the plan all along has been they don't want to ever have him testify under oath, because you know what happens if you get caught testifying and lying under oath? You go to jail.
So, Lanny, why don't you respond to that? What is the logic? What's the psychology here?
Well, first of all, I appreciate Joe's perspective, but his statement of belief is not a statement of fact. I'll tell you what the fact is. If you're in front of a kangaroo court and the Queen of Hearts says you're guilty, now I'll hear the evidence, there's a pretty tough judgment call. I don't know how Joe would do it if he was personally involved. Do you legitimize that Selig refusing to testify? Then he's going to come in having already been accused on national television by the person that is assessed 211 games penalty. So I can understand Joe's viewpoint, but at least understand this. He would have testified had Selig had the courage of at least having the optics of a fair process rather than a kangaroo court.
Why is his testimony predicated on what Bud Selig does?
Because the cross-examination of Selig is very important to put into the record that he has no evidence other than Tony Bosch. Let's understand there's no evidence other than negative random testing, 11 of them, during the 2-year time period that Selig has imposed a 211 penalty. No positive test for PEDs, and Selig needs to be asked by Rodriguez's lawyers. Then Rodriguez comes back and says, back to Mr. Selig, so what's your evidence besides Bosch, who, by the way, is under federal investigation for distributing drugs to teenagers? And, Joe, you know that the Major League Baseball investigators did a deal with Bosch, a guy distributing drugs to teenagers, to help him in order to get
They
Alex
painted
Rodriguez.
him in a corner.
Now,
We
is
know
that
that.
what we
Baseball
want our
painted him in
national
a corner.
pastime to do?
But Alex Rodriguez has got a smart legal team, including yourself. Why wouldn't you would know all along that Bud Selig's never going to testify? He hasn't testified since 2002 in any of these arbitration hearings. He did before the joint drug agreement was put in place. But recently, in the last 10 years, he hasn't. In the last 12 cases, he hasn't. So wouldn't you grab 6 other people that are similar or close, or could at least make the case that you would want with Selig? Couldn't you grab 6 other people, you know, other people close to him in Major League Baseball to help make the case on your side?
So
and couldn't you make the case in both in the arbitration hearing and in the court of public opinion?
Joe, you're a great reporter and you deal in facts. You've been spun by baseball. Selig testified 5 out of 7 times, and this is the first time there's ever been. This is the first time under the new drug program that, and he's refused. Are you hiding behind? Not you. Selig's hiding behind the fact that he hasn't testified when this is the first time under the new drug program. He made the accusation that Alex Rodriguez was guilty on national television before trial, and if it were you, you wouldn't walk into a kangaroo court like that. This is about fundamental fairness. Alex Rodriguez said publicly, I have not done PEDs, and that is his statement, and that
And
is
he
what
said it.
he's saying.
He said it on a radio program after he had the opportunity to say it under oath in front of an arbitrator, the only man who makes the decision on whether or not he's going to play baseball again. This is the one guy that stands between him and his legacy on the baseball diamond. He has 211 games. That puts him back in baseball when he's close to 40, well into 2015, if he upholds all 211 games.
I agree with you. It's a terrible situation that he faces and a terrible dilemma, and I certainly agree with you. It's a close call. But as to what you didn't say that was true, because you've been misled by, I think, deliberately by baseball, Bud Selig was on the witness list until the day before his representative announced that he wasn't coming. The fact that he's hiding behind closed doors and isn't willing to confront you or Mr. Rodriguez or anyone to justify 211 games when there isn't a single positive test out of 11 times random testing, he's not willing to confront anyone because he'd rather do it behind closed doors and give cash over the counter in a diner as a segment of Boardwalk Empire. That he seems to be comfortable doing.
We're going to have to leave it right there. We know it ain't over until it's over, right? All right, Lanny Davis, thank you so much. Joe Carter, appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, many people.